What's up, guys? It's John Dominique, the Soul Proponent. Today I want to talk about 6 different ways, 6 different techniques that'll help lead to spiritual awakening. Now, these techniques, they need practice. It's not like this is just going to happen overnight. We need to become a master at each of these and continue to improve our skills and improve our abilities on the path to the soul. The first technique that I want to talk about is questioning, also known as inquiry. And this is a very powerful technique, probably one of the most, if not the most powerful. This is the art of questioning. Instead of looking for answers, instead of looking for God, instead of looking for truth, we're going to do the reverse. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to start questioning. We're going to start to give away questions instead of trying to get answers. This is a kind of flipping things upside down, because the usual tendency, the usual ego, the usual orientation of the personality and the identity is to get. It's reaching, it's grabbing, it's searching, it's seeking. The art of questioning is more of a giving, more of allowing something higher to not find the right answers, but to find the right questions. And it's counterintuitive when we start to do this technique of questioning, because we're looking for answers most of the time. And if we're looking for answers, that's not going to help us find the truth that sets us free. The truth that sets us free doesn't make us more attached. It makes us more free. So if we're looking for answers, it's almost like we're digging our own hole. We're digging ourselves in a hole, making things worse. We're making things more difficult on the path. We have to be compassionate about this, because most people don't know this is an option. They don't know this is a thing. They don't know that. They think they're doing the best they can with what they know. They don't know that by looking for answers and searching for God and searching for truth, that it's going to make things worse for them. It's not going to bring them to spiritual awakening. It's going to strengthen their ego, strengthen their identity, strengthen their blocks and their obstacles. But if we start to question, why am I doing that? What am I trying to get? For instance, we can start to see that we're looking for some type of security, some type of foundation, some type of value. And we can look at ourselves deeper and find that maybe we're unknowingly abiding by the principle of looking for pleasure and avoiding pain. And that's not the path to the soul. That's the path to ego. We need to be aware of that and be very conscious and be radically honest about this. And we have to question ourselves deeply and continue to question ourselves on the path of the soul. So inquiry is a very important technique, very powerful way to get to spiritual awakening, questioning. The second technique I want to talk about is meditation. This is like the art of listening. Another very important, very powerful way to achieve spiritual awakening. We have to be humble enough to know that we don't know the answers. We don't know the way. And this is the human condition. We don't know. It's not knowing. And this can be very frightening, because we're used to and we're accustomed to knowing the answers, knowing what to do, knowing where to go. Our orientation is really going to be challenged by this. Meditation is the art of listening. It's not like, when people say prayers, they say what they want, like they want to have these ideas of reality, of how you want things to be. Meditation clears all of that. It's like clearing a straight path for the Lord, keeping our house swept clean. Meditation is the art of listening to see what's there. It's not going along with the usual turning and the usual activity, the busyness of the mind, of the head, trying to get answers, trying to find an end point. Meditation is opening up and listening. It's not a search. It's to reverse the appealing back, a process of elimination, and then the ability to stay with what's there. And what's going to be there, and this, you can check this for yourself, this is repeatable, observable, and predictable. There's going to be emptiness, a lot of emptiness, more and more emptiness, to the point you don't know what to do. It's going to make you go crazy. And that's why we have to get even quieter and get to the art of listening, because when God speaks, he speaks from the interior of ourselves, on the inside, from our hearts. It's not looking for voices or looking for answers from someone outside of ourselves. It's 100% interior. The art of listening is very important. We have to be still enough and silent enough to be able to hear what's going to be there. We don't know what's going to be there. We don't know the answers. We have to be humble enough to admit that to ourselves, and admit that we don't know the way. And to find the way, we have to be able to be quiet enough to allow something bigger, something larger to show us what the way is, what the truth is, what is supposed to be, what's supposed to happen in our lives. It's difficult to do this if we have an idea, if we have all these ideas in our head of what we think we want to happen. Like, there's a lot of times, one of the big obstacles is that we have these ideas. We don't question where these ideas come from. Oh, we have this image in our mind of an American dream of having a family, having a car, having a job. So we have to question where these ideas come from. And to be able to do that, we have to get quiet and get silent and really do the work of spiritual awakening. It takes a lot of listening, a lot of emptiness, a lot of blackness. And we have to be able to stay with that emptiness and allow it to show us what's there, to reveal the truth. This is an uncovering. This is a process of elimination. It's not an accumulative, something to gain or something to acquire. So meditation is very important, to get silent enough to be able to listen. This is the art of listening. The third technique I want to talk about is non-attachment. And this is a very important one too, non-attachment. Logically speaking, if we practice non-attachment and then apply the technique of non-attachment to non-attachment, we know, logically speaking, that'll get us to the truth that'll set us free. But very few people are willing to actually do the practice and take it as far as they can, regardless of consequences, regardless of the cost. And that's where most people don't want to pay the price, is what it is, for non-attachment. It gets very scary, very dicey. Like, we might be able to let go of certain small things like non-attachment, but there's a lot of unconscious things we don't know we're hanging on to. The biggest, most treacherous thing that we're holding on to is the identity, this idea of who we are. To let that go is a huge undertaking. It's a huge step. Nobody wants to let go of who they think they are, this idea of who they want to be, what they want to happen, their hopes, their dreams, and their desires. This is a very deep, a very intimate thing that everybody carries around inside without mostly being aware of how much this influences them. Now, once we start to realize how attached we are to these ideas of who we want to be, for instance, and this identity, then we see how badly we're attached. Then we see how deeply ingrained we are and how difficult we've made the path for ourselves. So non-attachment is a very important idea, a very important technique that we need to continue to practice on the path to spiritual awakening. And a lot of times, we can practice non-attachment when things are going good, when things feel good. Like, if we get to a state where we feel peace and tranquility, we're like, yeah, I'll practice we won't practice non-attachment when we want to hold on to something that we like. But when something bad happens, we still have to do the practice. And if we can't do the practice when something good or bad happens, then we're out of line. And so that's why it's important to practice this all the time, because if something bad comes, we can't be attached to the idea of that not happening or the idea of something good instead. So we need to be aware of that and see how how, what's the word, how unconsciously attached we are to our attachments. That's a huge thing. Very important technique. The next technique I want to talk about is non-judgment. So a lot of times we tend to judge if we practice non-attachment, and then we come to a state of maybe we're feeling guilty about something. And if we judge ourselves for feeling guilty, then it'll make things worse. It'll reinforce the ideas, the attachments of the ego. So we need to practice non-attachment, allow the guilt to be there and feel it in its entirety. Now, the ego is not something bad. It's trying to make us not feel one way and feel another way. It doesn't want us to feel pain. It wants us, and it's doing a good job. That's what it's there to do. But we need to be able to allow what's there. Whatever guilt feelings come up, whatever shame feelings come up, no matter how bad it is, we need to practice non-judgment to be able to allow the space that we need for our own awakening. Because there's going to be a lot of times where the ego is going to come in and judge things as bad, and it's very unconscious, very sneaky, very under the radar. We need to be aware how much judgment affects us on the path, because that's basically the downfall of mankind, not being able to quit judging. And it's not the last bite of the fruit of judgment or it's not the first bite of the forbidden fruit that does the most damage. It's the last bite, because when we get to the point where there's emptiness and nothingness, we don't want to allow that to be there, because we think it's bad. It makes us feel worthless. We think it's terrible. It's to be avoided. Like, it's going to make us, we're not going to be able to feel we're going to survive without our supports and the way things, without being comfortable and familiar with our identity, for instance. And so we judge ourselves. We judge that as bad. And that's the last bite of forbidden fruit. Like, we think that's something to be avoided, and we don't know when to quit judging. So non-judgment is very important, and to build a defensive wall, not a defensive wall, and not to be, here's the thing, we can't be attached to non-judgment. So we need to just defend against judgment and then not be attached to defending against judgment. A very tricky thing. But non-judgment is another technique on the path, which is on the path to spiritual awakening, which is very important. And the last technique I'm going to talk about is following truth, because this is like the single most important thing. If we don't follow truth, regardless of the consequences, then we're following falsehoods. It's one or the other. There's only one master. And it's very tricky, because sometimes we think we're following truth, but we're not, because the ego identity is very tricky. We don't know on an unconscious level that we're not following truth. We're following maybe someone else's truth, for instance. Or we're following our desires, our pleasures, what we think we want to happen, these ideas and these images we're chasing. That's not following truth. That's following the falsehoods. And we have to be able to stay with this truth. And that's why defending is so important, because the truth is going to lead us to more emptiness. And we have to be able to stay with that emptiness and allow that emptiness to be there. That emptiness is not going to last forever, but most people think it's so important that they avoid that emptiness. They avoid the insecurity. They avoid the inadequacies, the feelings of deficiency. It's so important that they're willing to do anything. It becomes like a matter of life and death. It feels so important, like it's the survival instinct, and that survival instinct takes over us without us even being aware of it. It's embedded in our DNA automatically. It seems like you can't ever defeat it. And it's not a matter of defeating, it's just watching it, seeing it, and allowing the spiritual awakening process to happen and unfold on its own. This is not a linear process. It's like you're going to take a couple steps backwards and maybe take 3 steps forward, or vice versa. So these techniques, following truth is very important on the path, because that's like our guiding light. Without following truth, without knowing what the falsehoods are and identifying the falsehoods, we're going to be lost. So that's important. These techniques can lead to spiritual awakening, but we have to be willing to practice them. It's so easy to just talk about them all day, but to actually put them into practice and go as far as we can with them, and continue to go as far as we can with them, and see how they operate in our experience, that can lead us to spiritual awakening, spiritual growth. And this is a process, and I'm here for people to ask questions, to find out how to use these techniques for themselves. I'm here to offer this information, it's not just here for me to talk about like I'm a good guy and I have all the answers. This is not what it's about. This is about sharing. And I do this because I care about humanity. I care about people. God is important. The soul is important. Spiritual awakening is important. And these are the techniques that can help us on the path of the soul. John Dominique, the soul proponent.